Hello and welcome to the magic of fishing. Today you join me on the Desborough Cut. It's a 1 kilometre long navigation channel from the River Thames above Sunbury Lock. I think it was built in about 1930 and I'm just a few hundred yards downstream from one of Britain's wealthiest towns, Weybridge. There's around 800 millionaires in residence there, including celebrities. There's loads of yacht clubs, rowing clubs, and lots of bars on the riverfront. It's a lovely little town. It's where the River Wey meets the River Thames, and I've come just a few hundred yards downstream where there is absolutely free fishing. Some lovely pegs too, easy to access, right on the level of the river. And I was tipped off about this section of river by a mate of mine, Neil Waite, who's an absolute Thames fishing addict. He's been fishing it all his life. He's tipped me off there might be a few good silvers here, roach, dace, maybe chub or bream. And I've come for an afternoon and evening session. It's late summer, and some of you may have seen my video on the River Thames from earlier this year, which was really me losing my Thames virginity. The first time I'd fished the Great River, despite the fact I'm 51 years old and I've been fishing for a good 45 years of those years on the planet. I've lived half my life in Surrey down south from my native Sheffield, and it's this bit of river is within half an hour's drive of home, so I'm really excited to be exploring a bit more of the Thames, even though I'm not quite on the river proper today. It's really deep water, nice steady flow. I've plumbed up, it's about 10 foot off the rod tip, and I'm going to do my usual river approach, or certainly on a new stretch of river, which is to fish the feeder to begin with, ground bait feeder out towards the middle while I feed up this inside line, and then I'll really look forward to trotting down a float later on with some hemp and castor, and we'll see what's at home. And you can see I needed the aid of my wheelbarrow. Still awaiting my new Coram barrow chair. We're a bit low on stock at the moment, but I use that to get down here from the car, and there's a tiny little path down. I actually feel quite cocooned, sat under lots of overhanging trees that come way out over the water. I've actually identified a little gap that I can just get the feeder through without snagging up. I'll be using that gap to cast out into the middle of the river, the main flow. Mixed up some ground bait earlier, some turbo dark, and I'll just be using a 1 ounce feeder to keep a bit of castor, hemp, maggot, also some corn going out into that line. And that's the view upstream. There you can see the artificial man-made divider that splits the main river from the Desborough Cut. And where those boats are moored further up, there's actually an island there that was created when this channel was built called Doilies, and it's got some history to it, and there's now a cocktail bar. It must be very enjoyable in the warmer months. Starting on double red maggot. Again, it's a tricky cast, but I've worked out it is possible. I've still managed to clip up to keep that feed. Occasionally catch a leaf in that tree, but it is possible to get out there, and clipped up, an instant tap there, instant rattle. Might even be a small fish on. If so, that would be an extremely quick first fish from the Desborough Cut, and it is. Good old bleak, eh? That's why, just like with my first session on the Thames near Old Windsor, I've brought some corn with me. I've been warned by one or two of my fishing mates who know the Thames far better than I that it's bleak city. So we'll continue with the maggot, but I'll keep some corn going through the ground bait, and we can switch to that if need be, but off the mark within a few seconds. And it's only a gentle cast really. It's a fairly wide stretch of river here, but it's more like the River Wey in Surrey that I'm used to fishing than the main River Thames, or indeed the Trent, which I grew up fishing. And you'll have hopefully seen my video from earlier this year where I got back on the banks of my beloved Trent. I love that river, but the Thames and its navigations could soon become another firm favourite. I think that bleak will have taken the bait on the drop. There are a few boats, there's a bit of traffic around, and it's a really popular place for dog walkers, joggers, cyclists. But as I say, I'm a little way down from the main path, and it does feel quite private and sheltered in this little spot under the trees. And I could have picked from any number of swims really. It's just a question of how far you want to walk away from the parking on the edge of Weybridge. Oh, there's another rattle. Again, small fish, but great that within 2 chucks there's signs of activity. Missed that one, but yeah, as an all-rounder and bit of a matchman, I'm always happy getting bites from anything to begin with, and I feel my way into the session, and whether it's on the feeder or float, I've got a few hours ahead of us, a good few hours ahead of us, to find out if there's anything better in residence. Feeder goes in, with a press, the hempen caster in, top him up, gentle squeeze both ends. We want it to come out and ready to go. Maybe later in the year by the time you see this, but it's mid-August, so we're still in summer, but there are a few signs, a few conkers starting to grow on the trees, and some of the flowers going over. Just a few signs we're getting into late summer now, but it is still the school holidays and it may be quite busy. There's another boat making its way up the river now. And the great thing about starting on the feeder, keeps your hands free while you're waiting for a bite, just to keep the feed going in on the trotting line, and that hopefully will build up a bit of competition and confidence in any fish down there before we give it a go. Bit of a noisy plane going over at the moment, which is normal for this part of the world, as you regular viewers will know, but I've got to say, other than that, it really does feel peaceful down here. And there is another little tap. I think it's going to be small fish to begin with, but that's completely normal on any natural water. Get the small fish interested first, keep the feed going in, and hopefully we'll build up the swim by the evening and there'll be some better fish around. And that is the one problem with feeder, of course. Probably would have been fine because the boat's over the other side, but just reeling in to be safe. Check the bait. Really is a boating community from what I can see, Weybridge. It's not far from my home in Woking, 20 minutes drive, and I'm familiar with the area from walks and bike rides with my young lad, and well, when he was young, should I say. And there are a few pubs in the area that I've been to through the years, but yeah, just like my first trip to the main River Thames at Windsor, I cannot believe it's taken me this long to get round to fishing such a impressive and convenient waterway. Give me a little wince every time I make that cast. So far, so good. And there goes something a little more sizable. Definitely had to reel in for that one. And I've got to say, as the tip starts rattling again, that I do love fishing public places like this, it takes me back to my youth where that was the only place you could fish. Park lakes, maybe a farmer's pond, that was a better bite. And rivers, you know, that's what I grew up fishing. And what have we got here? Nice little roach. Quite happy with that. Second fish. I think he might have been grabbed at some point by a cormorant or heron. There you go. First proper fish from the Desborough Cut. But yeah, I was saying, I grew up fishing natural and public venues, whether it was reservoirs or rivers, park lakes, ponds. And it was only in, I suppose, the 90s into the noughties that commercial fisheries came about, and I love a commercial fishery as much as the next angler. Plenty of bites, lots of action, a real bend in your rod, especially in the colder months. But although I love fishing matches on them through the summer with my old club up near Sheffield, I do miss sometimes fishing more natural or public venues. It's fascinating to watch all these boats and people walking by. There's real life going on here. It's not a case of park up, lock your car behind a gate and go and sit on a fairly uniform pond all day where you're only going to meet other anglers or one or two other anglers. And I'm not knocking commercials at all. They have done wonders for angling in this country. I just think if you've not been on a public access natural venue like this for a while, give it a go. It really is exciting fishing. You've no idea what's out there in front of you. You've heard the rumours from your mate. You've heard tales of huge chub, massive pike, barbel that look more like carp, and I'm not expecting to catch anything like that today, but just something exciting and magical about being on a big river or navigation channel, if you want to be pedantic. They're not always instant, the bites, but it's certainly been a fish a chuck so far. The water's very clear. We've not had too much rain in the last month or so, and the river is relatively low. I could really see this fish coming through, and guess what? I'm a third species in the first minute or two fishing. It's it was a small days, now gone back. Very lively. But yeah, I had roach, dace and a bleat within the first few chucks. And you know I like my variety. Here we go through Kamikaze Valley again. A bit violent that cast, but did the trick. Another tiddler. But again, more than happy getting bites. We'll feed away and fish away through the small stuff. Thought that was a tiny chublet for a second, but it's another very small dace. We'll give it another 2 or 3 chucks on the maggot and then perhaps sit it out on the corn, try that, but I must remember to keep the feed going in down the inside too. Another thing I love about fishing is the prevalence of rumours and myths, legends, whether it's some lost carp water with a giant lurking beneath the lily pads, or a free stretch of fishing like this that could throw up some really quality roach, for example. And I believe it was one of Neil Waite's friends who had a really good evening session along here earlier this summer. And there is another species, tiny little wasp, little perch, and he's wolfed that maggot down. But yeah, it was one of Neil's friends who had a really good session, a few hours in an evening, just down from a rowing club, similar place to where I am, hopefully, and caught some really cracking roach on the float. And you know, that information gets passed on by a good mate and someone who's not trying to keep all the information to themselves, and I'm hopefully going to get a great day out of it. Whether I get onto the bigger roach or not remains to be seen. But I love coming to a new venue with a bit of information from a friendly source. And why wouldn't you give this a go? Big wild river, cost to fish, apart from your annual licence, $0. Gotta love that. Barely need a catty to feed, could do it by hand, but I'm trying to keep it accurate, keep the two lines really distinct. Constant taps. I might have to give that corn a go before long, so sit it out, see whether there's anything better down there. You may remember I did really well on corn when I fished the Thames near Old Windsor for the first time. Lots of quality roach, dace. I wouldn't mind if the fishing's half as good as that today. Yeah, and talking of Neil, it's a shame. We were supposed to be fishing together today, and it's always nice to go fishing with a mate. Makes a change. And we were thinking of having a bit of a face-off, a fishing face-off, along about 2 or 3 themes. Obviously north versus south. His home patch versus my first time on this stretch of the river. He is a specimen hunter, really. I mean, he loves all this fishing, but he's caught some cracking fish out of the Thames, some really whopping barbel and chub, big carp as well. So we're going to have a sort of specie versus match approach to it. He was going to fish his pellets, and I've brought my casters and hemp. But unfortunately, something came up for him that he couldn't avoid. There's a chance he might show his face later, say a quick hello. He doesn't live a million miles away, but maybe that video idea is something we'll have to try and pull off another time. As with everything in life, it's just finding the evening or the weekend where we're both free. The weather's all right. That was a good bite, and I think I missed it. Oh no, I didn't. It's amazing what small fish can do on a relatively light quiver tip, and that's a better dace. Nice little dace. Ooh, and he's unhooked himself in my lap. Back he goes. But yeah, Neil, if you don't make it down to say hello to the folks later, and you're watching this some point later in the year, tough luck, mate, and we'll have to try and make it happen another time. And talking of ideas for videos, future videos on this channel, I mean, to be honest, I have no problem coming up with them. I dream about fishing, daydream about it, dream about it. I'm always thinking of new places I want to go, or old haunts I want to revisit. Tackle and tactics I want to give a go that I've not used for a while as a tap. Baits that have perhaps fallen out of fashion, or species of fish I've never caught. The options are endless. That's another tiddler. But you know, I love hearing from you folks at home who are the whole reason I do this. I love sharing my fishing with you, and it's brilliant when I hear from you in the comments, makes my day. So if you've got any ideas, sensible or silly, for future videos, you are welcome to leave a comment about that, or indeed the fishing today. Another little boat comes past. Admiral Archie Stevens. That's a very young admiral. That's an interesting looking boat coming up. Like a little tug or something. Half a barge. Boat builders. I think you'll find the vast majority of people on rivers are friendly. That's what I like about fishing these public places from time to time. The beauty of fishing, so many different ways to enjoy it. Nothing on the corn yet, but we've only given it 10 minutes. Give it a while longer yet. And of course I know there are a few small fish down there, so I'm happy waiting for something better to come along, at least for a bit longer. I was just thinking, the reason I knew about the cocktail bar, open air cocktail bar on the island just upstream from me on the island, Doyley, was that my wife Rachel and I were on a summer evening walk along the path just behind me not so long ago. We actually went over the little bridge to have a look and a little nosy round. We didn't stop for a drink, we actually went to a nearby pub called the Minnow, had a burger and a pint instead. Typical northerners, you might be saying, but yeah, it looked like a lovely spot to enjoy a drink on a hot summer's evening. That's one thing perhaps that could compete with fishing. And it was actually on that walk not so long ago, this summer, that I bumped into Smithy. Some of you may recognise that name from the comments on the channel. He's been a long time viewer and one of the most regular comment makers on the magic of fishing. Absolutely lovely bloke in terms of the written stuff he leaves. But yeah, I was walking along just up near the big weir with my wife, and suddenly hear this, John. Looked over, there's a pike angler with a lure rod, and he's waving at me. I'm thinking, do I know this bloke? Don't recognise him. And it turned out to be Smithy from the channel, and bless him, he recognised me, even just walking along with Rachel from a distance. It was lovely. We had a very quick chat, shook hands. He's from the Black Country, and yeah, it was great to meet a fellow angling addict and someone who's living in this part of the world. So shout out to you, Smithy, as well. It was fantastic meeting that time, and I did say we would get fishing on here together at some point. Can't promise when, but it will happen before I take my last breath. And that is another reason it's great to fish and be in public type places where you can fish, because you meet other anglers, you meet other people that are interested in your passion. Right, I've given it a good 15 minutes. I think I'll have to go back on a maggot just to keep my spirits up, and we'll also keep that feed going in. Oh, I hooked myself in the nose there. We'll keep the feed going in down the inside, give the float a go. Now, I can hear a boat coming, but we've just gone back out on the maggot, and that might not be a problem because the bites do tend to come pretty quick. We'll see whether we can get away with it. just far enough out, he says. Close. Close, but I could leave the feeder in. That may mean we don't get an instant bite. Bit of disturbance, but it's very deep, so I shouldn't imagine it causes much of a distraction to the fish. I think this might be a sign to give the feeder a rest. A Walton lady is coming through, and she's a big lady. We've got our first fish on the float. Only a small one, but lovely to see that float go under. See how deep I am. 15-foot rod. The float is almost at the rod tip. I've just swung a nice little roach out. A couple of ounce, but that's fine by me on light gear. And roach is one of the species I had in mind after hearing the stories. It's an unusual cast, if you can call it a cast, sort of a swing out through the gap in the tree straight in front of me, rather than the usual flick over downstream. And the flow is steady. It's not as pacey as the Thames was when I first fished that. It's more like the Wey. Again, this is a navigation channel, not the main river. And I'm actually using the rod, the reel and the rig you may have seen me using on the Thames near Old Windsor and Datchet. It's not that long ago since I was on there. I like to keep a few rods set up if I can. You never know when you get a chance to get out. And because it's so deep here, I'd say it's a good 10-11 foot. The rig that I had on from the Thames the other day was actually spot on. It's a nice big 2.5 gram Olivet. Just about feed by hand. And that's great for getting straight down to where that hempen caster is going to be hitting the deck. And it's a fairly big topped float, big thick bristle on it, more of an avon pattern than a stick. Wire stemmed, it gives it good stability, and it's not a float that's made for fishing on the drop. It's a float for getting that bait and the bulk down quickly. That's another small fish from down the bottom of the swim, and I think caster is the bait to stick to. Another little stripey. As my late dear departed and much loved granddad used to say to me, "John, where there are small fish, there are big uns." And I still take faith in that sage wisdom to this day. And we've now got a party atmosphere. Several teenagers swimming, music on, and believe it or not, they've been jumping off that bridge. So it really is a river for everyone today. Well, with the party going on over the other side and bites really hard to hit, I'm going to do what I preach, practice what I preach, change up, and put a lighter, more sensitive float on, and hopefully we'll start hitting more. I'm going to switch up from this Avon style float to this bollo with a nice fine insert tip, and hopefully that'll show the bites more quickly and more sensitively, and mean I hit more of them. It's satisfying. In amongst some kids' canoe races, I've gone back in on the lighter float, and that's a day's first chop.
Thank you. Thank you.
And they just keep coming after that change of float. Very consistent dace with a few ounces, but I'm more than happy to have at least cracked the code of those missed bites. And if we keep feeding, keep fishing, as light starts to fall this evening, who knows, we might get some better fish moving. It's that lack of resistance from the float really has transformed things, and it's a reminder to me as much as anything that when things aren't working, make a change. If you're getting bites but not hitting them, make a change. If you're not getting bites, make a change. Ooh, one of the better ones, that. Ah, and there's a roach. Similar sort of size, but that's a welcome sign. And there's another roach. Where there's one, sometimes get more. Nice. That's a bit of a better roach as well. It might not look it on the camera, but the light really is low under these trees. And there's a little stripey here. Just still can't get through to anything bigger than a few ounces. I'm sure if Neil were here, he'd show me how it's done on the pellet. But he ain't, and I'm enjoying myself. As I keep saying, it's not that I'm not enjoying these fish, it's just I'd like to see something a little bit bigger for all the bait and effort that's gone in. Oh, I've definitely found the roach now, even if they're of a modest stamp. The roach of Desborough Cut are showing up. Better late than never. Another nice days. Well, as you can see, there's a lovely sunset going on behind me. In fact, it's a beautiful evening. It's really still again now. The wind's dropped. The boat traffic's gone. The rowers have packed up for the evening. Kids have stopped swimming. It really is peaceful. And it's a lovely place to fish. Okay, the biggies of Desborough Cut, the rumoured big roach, have eluded me this evening, but they're not easy fish to target on any river. This is my first time on this stretch, first time in this peg, picked at random, and I've absolutely filled my boots with smaller stuff: roach, dace, perch, bleak, loads of bites, loads of action. So no complaints from me. I've really enjoyed myself. But yeah, the corn couldn't pull me in any better fish, and I think it's time to give it a bit longer on the maggot and caster and then pack up, maybe head for a cocktail. And they're still biting. Back on the maggot. Well, folks, they might not be big, but there's a hole Load of roach, dace and perch in there. Not bad for free fishing, eh? Really pleased with that bag. Let's get them back quickly. Off they go to get a bit bigger. And hopefully I'll be back here one future summer evening, or perhaps an October day, or maybe even at Christmas, but I will be back in search of the better ones. My thanks to Neil for recommending it and for free fishing. That's fantastic. So all that remains for me to do is thank you for watching. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button, or if you've been watching for a while and not got round to it, just take a second, it really would be appreciated. And we can keep growing this community and keep bringing you great videos like this. To all you faithful followers, you know what's coming. Much love, leave a comment, I love hearing from you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon in the bar.